Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Brendan Fallon. President Biden confronting concerns about his age after his debate last night with former President Trump, what Biden vows to do now, and how his campaign is responding to calls for him to drop out. Iris Tao is at Biden's post-debate rally. A major ruling that could impact hundreds of January 6th defendants, including former President Trump. Find out what the Supreme Court has to say about obstruction charges. The Texas Supreme Court upholds the state's ban on cross-sex surgeries and puberty blockers for children. The U.S. Supreme Court considers a similar Tennessee law. One of America's most popular online shopping sites is in hot water. Arkansas is suing the Chinese-owned Temu, accusing it of being spyware in disguise. Russia says it will produce intermediate-range nuclear missiles. Hear what the Prussian president has to say about U.S. deployment of the weapons. President Biden confronts questions about his age as supporters react to his performance at last night's debate. NTD's Iris Tao reports from Biden's rally in Raleigh, North Carolina.
And President Biden vowing to get back up while acknowledging concerns about his age after his debate with former President Trump last night drew criticism about his performance.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. When you get knocked down, you get back up.
At his post-debate rally here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Biden repeats similar lines of attacks against Trump on issues including abortion, the economy, and January 6th.
The choice in this election is simple. Donald Trump will destroy our democracy. I will defend it.
Biden's campaign says Biden will not drop out of the race. And his supporters here who are invited by the campaign say they still back Biden despite some disappointments about last night.
Biden's performance may not have been his best, but as far as winning, his content was obvious. Biden is an honest, moral, thoughtful person.
I think Biden could have been a little bit stronger, but I still agree with everything, all of his positions.
Some of the moments early on in the debate are widespread across social media, especially with my generation. It was kind of like, not troubling, but more like concerning to watch and see.
But I hope people will see beyond that.
Reporting from Raleigh, North Carolina, Iris Tao, NTD News.
During last night's presidential debate, Biden and Trump covered foreign policy, inflation, and the border crisis. Viewers zoned in on both candidates' proposed policies as well as on their on-stage performance.
I think the way the debate was structured with the specific questions, I think I don't think I took anything away new that I already didn't know.
But then they ask a question, and it's like they're reading off a teleprompter, and the answer doesn't make any sense. So no, I didn't get anything from it other than the current commander-in-chief is clearly not fit to lead this country. That's all I got out of it.
The disqualifying factor for Trump in general is the fact that he doesn't operate from a sense of morality.
There's the liberal democratic world against the tyrannical regimes. Biden is much better on supporting our allies than Trump is.
Well, it's clear that Joe Biden is not all there. That is pretty obvious. And Trump, I thought that he was he should have done a lot better. He didn't answer a lot of the questions, precisely and concisely like he should have, but I mean, he clearly won the debate, though, in my opinion.
Biden is a truth teller. He tells the truth, and he believes in real things.
One of the candidates kept talking about how there isn't inflation and there isn't a bad economy. And everybody in my neighborhood will tell you there's inflation, there's a really bad economy, and it's really tough right now.
A lot of the criticisms I have on Biden are things I could also criticize Trump for. Biden has had a hyper-expansionary fiscal policy with big deficits. So has Trump.
The country needs Biden or someone like Biden to lead it.
So get the country right first. Make sure it's in a surplus, not a deficit. Make sure your healthcare system's working. Make sure you look after your veterans. Make sure you look after your American people first. And then, once you've got all that established, then you can bring everyone in. Trump has to win.
Now we have several major rulings from the Supreme Court today, and one potentially impacting hundreds of January 6th defendant cases, including that of former President Trump.
In a 6-3 decision, the justices sided with Joseph Fisher. He's a January 6th defendant who challenged his charge of obstructing an official proceeding. The court ruled that the charge must include proof that defendants tried to tamper with or destroy documents, which didn't apply in Fisher's case. The court's majority opinion says that reading the obstruction statute broadly, quote, would also criminalize a broad swath of prosaic conduct, exposing activists and lobbyists to decades in prison. About 350 January 6 defendants have been charged with obstruction, including former President Trump. In another major ruling, the Supreme Court has ruled that cities can ban homeless people from sleeping outside in West Coast areas. The justices ruled 6-3 that Grants Pass, Oregon, can punish homeless people for sleeping outdoors on public property. They rejected the argument that the ban violates the Constitution's 8th Amendment, which bars cruel and unusual punishment. Grants Pass ordinances fine homeless people $295 for sleeping outside. The city argues the policy is to limit homeless encampments. Homeless advocates argue that such a policy punishes people when they don't have any alternatives. Finally, the Supreme Court has restricted the power of federal agencies to interpret the law. The High Court overturned the 1984 ruling Chevron versus Natural Resources Defense Council. The 1984 ruling gave federal agencies the power to interpret the law when the language is unclear. That decision made it easier for the federal government to regulate the environment, public health, workplace safety, and consumer protections. This current case stemmed from a fee requirement by the National Marine Fisheries Service. The agency requires Atlantic herring fishermen to pay for government-mandated observers who track their fish intake. The fee could have topped $700 a day. Opponents of the 1984 Chevron ruling argue that it gave too much power to bureaucrats to interpret the law. Supporters, including the Biden administration, argue that overturning the precedent would create a convulsive shock to the legal system.
The House of Representatives has passed 3 appropriations bills despite threats from the White House to veto them if they ever reach the president's desk. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has more on this story.
Of course, Brendan, this Friday, House Republicans passed strictly through party lines the Defense, Homeland Security, and State and Foreign Operations appropriations bills for fiscal year 2025. Democrats denounced Republican budget cuts and alleged culture war policies, and Republicans defended the need to reduce the $34 trillion budget deficit.
I've lived and worked on 5 different continents. I've worked out of 2 United States embassies, and the waste, fraud, and abuse that's taken place around the world when we're talking about this is massive.
Is that far right to cut budgets from deprioritized spending?
The American people are having difficulty filling up a gas tank and a grocery cart on the same day. So if the far right position is we want to make sure that illegal aliens can't come to the United States, kidnap, rape, and murder our children, apparently I'm far right.
The defense appropriation bill increased 1% compared to fiscal year 2024, reaching up to $833 billion. The Homeland Security appropriation bills increased by $3 billion, $600 million going to building a border wall, and State Department and Foreign Operations received an 11% budget cut.
We saw important budget cuts in the State Department and Foreign Operations. Do you have any reactions to that?
Well, that's a tool for us, the strength of our diplomacy. And I think that the Republican Party is going in the wrong direction and asking us to retreat from the world stage. The world needs American leadership, and through our departments of state, through USAID, we're able to expand diplomatic channels. So I voted against their proposal to cut those very vital agencies.
Democrats suggested that a continuing resolution might be a solution to the impasse until a new Congress is sworn in after the general elections. Back to you, Brendan.
The Texas Supreme Court today upheld the state's ban on transgender surgeries and puberty blockers for children. Texas is the largest of at least 25 states that have adopted laws prohibiting or restricting the practice for minors. The law in Texas has been in effect since September 1st, 2023. The U.S. Supreme Court recently agreed to hear an appeal from the Biden administration attempting to block the state bans. The case before the High Court involves a Tennessee law that also restricts puberty blockers for minors. Opponents of the law say children will suffer without access to transgender procedures and hormone therapies. Proponents say the law is necessary to protect children who shouldn't make life-altering decisions they might later regret. About 300,000 Haitians already in the United States will now be eligible for temporary legal status. The Department of Homeland Security is expanding temporary protected status, or TPS, to them. The expansion of TPS applies to Haitians who are in the United States on June 3rd. It will last until February 3rd, 2026. The Biden administration will also offer an extension to an estimated 200,000 Haitians who already had TPS. The DHS says it's unsafe for them to return to the Caribbean nation. Congress created TPS in 1990 to prevent deportations to countries suffering natural disasters or civil strife. Gangs have pillaged their way through the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, and surrounding areas in recent years. Thousands of Haitians have been killed, raped, or kidnapped. Hundreds of thousands of others are homeless. A raging wildfire has prompted evacuation orders near Scottsdale, Arizona. According to the Arizona officials, the Boulder View fire has consumed over 3,000 acres and is not contained. Approximately 60 residences were evacuated overnight. Local media reported that the blaze had spread over 3,500 acres by this morning. Video shot from the Tranquility Trail Animal Sanctuary showed burning flames and smoke rising over a wide expanse of land. Arkansas is taking one of the most popular shopping apps in the U.S. to court. The state sued Temu and its Chinese parent company Tuesday, alleging that Temu is malware disguised as an e-commerce platform. The lawsuit said it's designed to get unfettered access to a user's phone by overriding data privacy settings. As for what kind of data it collects, fingerprints, locations, text messages, contacts, camera access, and documents, the lawsuit accuses Temu of selling this data to third parties to make money.
Temu was the most downloaded app in the U.S. in 2023. It allows American users to buy cheap goods made in China, and it's owned by a Chinese company called PDD Holdings, which is listed on the NASDAQ. The lawsuit also raised concerns that Beijing could get a hold of the data collected by Temu. That's because Temu is owned by a Chinese company, and under Chinese law, companies must hand over user data to officials if they ask for it. Arkansas's Attorney General alleges that Temu is led by a cadre of former Chinese Communist Party officials. Temu denies the allegations, saying they're based on misinformation and are totally unfounded. But the company is in hot water. Congress is investigating Temu over data security concerns, and the state of Montana banned Temu and TikTok from government devices, citing threats to user security. Last year, Apple suspended Temu from the Apple App Store for misrepresenting the type of user data it's capable of collecting. Apple later lifted the restriction. Google suspended parent company PDD's app in the same year because it contained malware. Arkansas is seeking a $10,000 civil penalty on Temu.
Coming up, Russia says it will produce intermediate nuclear missiles. What the Russian president has to say about U.S. deployment of the weapons. Uber and Lyft settle with Massachusetts agreeing to a minimum pay for their drivers. How much the drivers will be getting, that and more after the break here on NTD News.
When I started MyPillow, it was just a problem solution, one product company. Well, since then, with the help of my dedicated employees, we now have hundreds of products, some you might not even know about. To get the word out, we're having a $25 extravaganza. 2-pack multi-use MyPillows, $25. MyPillow sandals, $25. And for the first time ever, our 6-pack towel sets, you guessed it, just $25. Our brand new 4-pack dish towels, $25. And I've never done this before. Premium MyPillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size for only $25. And there's so much more. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code for our $25 extravaganza. Order $75 and over. Your entire order ships absolutely free.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Are you ready to help your family get prepared for the unexpected?
Everyone in? Here we go!
Ladybug and Cat Noir know how important it is to be ready. Because you never know when Hawkmoth is going to strike, or a disaster will hit. And you don't need miraculous powers. Just put those planning skills you already have to good use. Know who to call, decide on a safe meeting location, and create an emergency preparedness kit. Make a plan that will help you and your family be ready when emergencies happen. Ready Kids can help.
I'm coming to save you!
Get started at ready.gov/kids.
Russia says it will resume the production of short and intermediate-range nuclear missiles. This after Putin claims that the U.S. is deploying these same weapons in Europe and Asia. The Russian president today said that the U.S. has brought nuclear missiles to Denmark and the Philippines. In response, he says that Russia must now also begin producing land-based missiles for its own protection. The U.S. withdrew from a 1987 Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty with Russia in 2019, saying that Moscow was already violating the accord. The Kremlin denied the accusation. French citizens are preparing to vote for members of parliament this weekend, but some are concerned about the current political situation. NTD's international correspondent David Vives spoke to residents in Paris this morning.
French citizens are preparing to vote for members of parliament this weekend. Poll directors say voter mobilization should be the highest in the country's history for this kind of election. 3 days before the first round of elections, some Parisians expressed worries about the political situation in the country.
The stakes seem really high to me, i.e. we are not used to see the National Rally leading the elections campaign. I see it as a vote to punish the current government, in fact. But regarding Macron, I think he's understood how the people feel and he'll do what's necessary to ease the situation on Sunday evening. This is a very serious situation. We can see that France is tearing itself apart and that nothing stands out in what politicians have been saying during the campaign so far. There is nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's empty.
People are angry, and people are angry at the President Macron for basically presenting himself when he was elected as a wall against the National Rally. He just helped the National Rally to be in a dominant position in these elections.
Latest polls show 36% of the vote will go to the National Rally. The left-wing coalition comes second with 25% of intended votes, while Macron's party stands at only 20%. These numbers have been consistent since Macron's announcement of the snap elections on June 9th, after his party lost the European elections. But the situation seems to have backfired against him, as his party is on the losing edge of the election. Polls also show the National Rally is close to winning an absolute majority of seats at the parliament. An absolute majority for the national rally would mean the political group would be able to vote on bills, set policies and set the agenda for the country, while a relative majority might be the worst case scenarios, as poll makers have it, as it would render the country ungovernable. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
The White House is seeking roughly $4 billion from Congress to cover repairs on the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. The money is part of a new emergency request from President Biden's administration. $3.1 billion would go to the Department of Transportation. Nearly $80 million would go to the Coast Guard. Another $33 million would be designated for the Army Corps of Engineers. Amazon hits a $2 trillion market cap, joining tech giants like Apple and Microsoft. Here is NTD's Don Ma with today's Business Matters.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Amazon has officially become part of the $2 trillion club, joining the ranks of other big tech powerhouses. Amazon is now the 5th company in the U.S. to make the jump past $2 trillion in market cap worth. And this comes as shares have rocketed more than 50% in the past 12 months. The company now joins Alphabet, Apple, Microsoft, and NVIDIA at the top. In a letter to shareholders, Amazon's chief executive said the company is prioritizing its spot as a competitor in AI innovations. And he anticipates the technology will be as critical to its growth as its prime services and online marketplace. Wall Street analysts also report Amazon's logistics business could surpass UPS as the nation's largest shipper, possibly boosting Wall Street earnings further. Now, in other news, Uber and Lyft are hailing a settlement they reached in a lawsuit against them by the state of Massachusetts. They're agreeing to pay their drivers a minimum wage of $32.50 an hour. Rideshare drivers will also be provided with benefits under the agreement, and those include paid sick leave based on the number of hours worked and occupational accident insurance. The company will also pay a combined total of $175 million to the state, and the money resolves claims Uber and Lyft violated the state's labor laws. Most of the money will go to the current and past rideshare drivers. The lawsuit sought to have the drivers classified as employees, and under the deal, the company's drivers will remain as independent contractors. The companies say they will stop pushing a ballot initiative to let the voters decide the matter this year. In a statement, the state attorney general said for years the companies underpaid their drivers and denied them basic benefits, and the agreement holds them accountable. Okay, back to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Don. New York City Public Schools recently announced they are considering a ban on cell phones starting next January. Chancellor David Banks says there are concerns that phones are disrupting learning. NTD's Daniel Monahan speaks with Dr. Jean Cirillo for analysis on how that could affect students.
The phone ban would hit more than 2,000 schools, affecting over 1 million students. Attorney and psychologist Dr. Jean Cirillo compares one of the potential drawbacks of the ban to the era of prohibition.
Once you grant a privilege and people get so used to it, and kids have had the use of the phone in school for now 15 years, I'd say, since the 2010s, certainly, and they're so used to it, it's hard to have it taken away. It feels like they're being punished. And now you're going to have a lot of people sneaking around anyway.
Cirillo suggests a reasonable alternative might be for kids to leave their phones with a teacher or monitor.
They get an emergency call from a family member, or if they need to make an emergency call, they can go during recess and pick up their phone. They can even text or call their friends during recess or study period.
On the bright side, the psychologist says the move will force kids to learn to have face-to-face conversations with people.
It sounds funny, but there's a woman that advertised. She charges $450 an hour to teach people how to handle an interview face-to-face without Zoom, without Skype.
Despite some initial withdrawal, Cirillo believes academically students would thrive in time.
For psychological well-being, not to have to be wired constantly to that phone, as well as the computer in school studying. And many psychological studies have shown that you can't totally multitask. So you're listening to the teacher with half an ear, looking at your school computer with half an eye, and then you're always looking to see if the phone's buzzing or lighting up. you're really distracted.
Cirillo says kids will also have to learn to settle conflicts without phones.
You'll have to work it through face to face, and somebody should be there to moderate, but that doesn't mean getting into physical fights. But you learn how to argue, discuss, come to terms, talk things over before you get thrown into a workplace where you have to do that anyway. And if you're not skilled at doing that, you might not get a second chance. No matter how brilliant you are, if you can't get along with your boss and coworkers, you're not going to be there very long.
Los Angeles Unified School District recently banned phones from 2025. The trend reflects growing efforts nationwide to minimize distraction and enhance classroom focus. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Former President Trump is holding his first campaign event today following the debate last night. He's speaking from historic Greenbrier Farms in Chesapeake, Virginia. Joining Trump today is Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin. This will be their first time appearing together. The two men recently met in private and discussed how Trump could win Virginia in November. Local authorities say 10,000 people could attend the rally. Some Trump supporters lined up at the venue as early as 2 a.m. this morning. Long lines of cars or people formed around the area. We see that Trump's motorcade has arrived. That is former President Trump's campaign event in Chesapeake, Virginia. To see more of this, you can visit our website, ntd.com, for the live stream. Thank you for watching NTD Newsroom. I'm Brendan Fallon. Join Tiffany Meyer for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific. Have a great weekend.